Hello there, you're welcome to HisGov TV. In today's video, we are going to introduce you to the WAEC Chief Examiner's report. And today we'll be looking at history. As time moves on, we will look at the other subjects, but today we are focusing our attention on the WAEC Chief Examiner's report on history, or the history paper. This examiner's report is on 2021 WASSCE exams. So 2021 WASSCE exams report. Now, somebody may ask, so what is the importance of this report, or what is even the chief examiner's report? Now, this report is about students' conduct in the exams. So at every exams, or at the end of every year, WAEC will publish mistakes and weaknesses of students, as well as a summary of candidates' performance in that particular year. So when students read these, or teachers and students read this report, it gives them an idea about what happens in the examination room, and also the mistakes that students are likely to make in the examination. And so it is very, very important information for both teachers and students. However, most students are not even aware, or even some teachers are not even aware about the WAEC Chief Examiner's report. And so we'll be looking at most of the subjects, but today we'll begin with history. So let's read about the history paper, the WASSCE History Paper 2021. What was, of course, what happened in the examination room? What were students' weakness and strength, as well as what can be done to improve students' performance in that paper? Good. So let's take a look at the general comment. So it begins. So this only deals with the paper 2. That's the essay questions. Now, this is the general comments. The question set this year were within the scope of the syllabus, unambiguous, and within the reach of the candidate in terms of the level of thinking. 2, performance of candidates was a marked improvement on the previous year, as they performed well on all the 3 critical grade points. So this is a general comment of WAEC about the chief examiners, or the chief examiner's general comment on the paper. Now, when you come down, the chief examiner then talks about the strength of students. So that is the candidate's strength in the examination, in the answering of questions, the student's strength. So let's look at the student's strength. So summary of candidate strength. Coherent answers. So 1 was coherent answers, what students did well. 1 was students provided coherent answers. An encouraging number of candidates wisely did some planning before writing their answers. Such planned answers flowed in logical and coherent order. Teachers should encourage this practice, for it makes the reading, assessment, and award of marks clear and fair. But candidates should cross out such plan or rough work, because they do not intend them to be part of their final answer. So the examiners are commending students for giving coherent answers. That is, students plan their points on the paper before they begin to write them. However, the examiners are cautioned that you should cross out the points that you write as a short point. Cross them out after the paper, because they are not part of the paper. 2, relevance. An appreciable number of candidates did marvelously well by presenting their points with cogent and logical examples, especially for question 1, 4, 8, and 9, and obtaining higher marks. So we will look at all these questions as we moved on. So let's look at summary of candidates weaknesses. So what were some of the things that the candidates did that were also not good. Leaving blank lines. Still, some and quite an appreciable number of candidates leave blank lines or spaces in presentation of their point instead of presenting each point in a paragraph. So I hope you get this thing. Students are fond of doing that. Students will present, maybe for example, point one. Say Kofi is going to school. Then after the explanation, instead of students to write the second point in a paragraph, students will then leave one line in between the points and begin the next one. This, the examiners are saying, is not right. And so students should put an end to it. Write them in paragraphs. So you paragraph your first point, then you paragraph your second point. Don't leave a space in between your points. 2, all points in one paragraph. Some also presented the points in one paragraph. That's making marking difficult since an examiner has to strain before awarding marks. Now, some students also, if they are asked to present 4 points, what they did was that they put all these 4 points in one paragraph. They don't even paragraph their work. And this is very important because examiners look at the paragraphs as points. And so if you cramp all points in one paragraph, it becomes very difficult for the examiners to read, and they have to strain before marking. And if you're not careful, they'll mark you down. So please, if you don't know how to paragraph your work, make sure you go and learn about paragraphing. I hope you do that in your English class, paragraphing. So that was also a weakness of some students. Again, tenses. Surprisingly, quite a number of candidates presented their answers in present tense instead of past tense, thus losing marks. And this I have always been telling my students, that write in past tense. You are talking about history. You are writing history. And therefore, everything that you are writing about is in the past. And therefore, your tenses should be in past tense. So you don't write Amma is, you write Amma was. You don't write Amma has, you write Amma had. Okay? You don't write Kofi and Amma are, you write Kofi and Amma were. You understand? So all your verbs should be in the tenses. And this, students find it very difficult to do. And they will normally write in present tense. And the more you write in present tense, the more you lose marks as well. So let's look at the section A. Now, the section A of the history syllabus continued to remain a challenge to many history students. This is reflected in the weak manner candidates responded to questions posed in that section of the paper, especially of course, question 1, 2, and 3. Now, the section A, this section A has to do with the landmarks of African history, where you learn historiography, you learn the importance of history, the sources of history. Then you come to learn about the man-ape, and then you jump to the civilizations and also what do you call it? I've forgotten this one. The methods in the reconstruction of African history. Those aspects, all the topics that you do or you read in Form 1, Year 10, according to the examiners, that area continued to be a challenge to history students. And so you should learn that place very well before you go to the examination room. Now, let's look at some of the remedies that these examiners have suggested for you as a student. In future, candidates should be taught about tenses to be used in presenting their points, since most of the events from which questions said took place in the past. And that's what I have already said. 2, candidates can overcome the use of wrong words by cultivating the habit of reading magazines and storybooks and relevant literature. They should get good dictionaries to aid them get the meanings and correct usage of words. They may also keep an inventory of such words and refer to them often in doubt. And so this is also very important. You see, the art field or the humanities, we use words. We play with words. We don't deal with figures. We play with words. And so if you lack words, it becomes very difficult. And even the usage of these words correctly, it becomes very difficult for you. So that is what examiners are recommending. Again, a careful and orderly arrangement of answers enhances accurate assessment. A candidate should therefore be advised to fully complete the answers to one question before they tackle the next one. Where it becomes necessary to continue an answer to a question elsewhere, the examiner should be directed. The candidates are advised not to reserve pages or spaces for questions they are not ready to answer immediately. And this, students always find they are always a victim to that. They leave a space thinking that when I finish, I'll come and answer my question here. Examiners are saying that when you do that, sometimes even the spaces that you leave may not be adequate for the answers that you want to provide for that paper. And so it makes your work becomes clumsy and not orderly arranged. Now, 4, teachers should come up with a teaching method that will make the teaching and learning of this subject interesting and meaningful to candidates. And this one is for all teachers. Like I said at the beginning, this examiner's report is good for teachers, it's good for students. Good. So let's now take a look at the detailed comments. The detailed comments deal with the questions one after the other. Students' performances in all the questions, 9 of them. Let's take a look at. So this is the section A part, the landmarks of African history up to 1800. And this part was where the examiners said that students find it very difficult to answer questions in this area. So let's look at the first question. So the question 1, when you look at the 2021 WASSCE history, this question on Egypt was popular. Now, was popular in the sense that we have, when you go to an examination room, we have popular questions and we have unpopular questions. Me, I term the unpopular questions as questions for the fools. There are some questions that you are not supposed to answer. They are just there. You don't have to answer. Even if you answer, you realize that only a few students will tackle it. Those are unpopular questions. And there are questions that are very popular. You realize that this question, a lot of people will answer. Now, the question on Egypt was popular. We will look at the questions as we move on. Many of the candidates who attempted delivered well. However, a handful of the candidates deviated from the task by writing everything on the civilization of Egypt instead of outlining any 5 features of the religious system of Egypt. And so this was the question. Outline any 5 features of the religious system of the Egyptians. That was the question for number 1 in 2021 History WASSCE. And according to the examiners, a lot of them wrote so many things about the Egyptian civilization, the political aspect, the development in agriculture, the military organization. That is what students did. But the question was, just write the religious system. So you got to be very careful. The question was specific in its demands and did not expect candidates to write on the achievements of the pharaohs and their contribution towards civilization. It must be stressed that a lot more of the candidates addressed the question aptly and scored higher marks. The overall performance of candidates was good because it was a popular question. A lot of candidates would tempt it. So that is what students did. Let's look at the question number 2. Okay, this is of course question number 2. Now, this question on the Berber was not popular. So there was a question on the Berber. We will look at the question as we move on. This was evident in the kind of weak response given by the candidates in addressing the question. Most of the candidates could not list the group of peoples who came into contact with the Berbers in the part of the question. So the part A of the question 2 demanded that students list the groups that the Berbers came into contact with. And surprisingly, students were not able to list that. I mean, those groups, the Arabs and the Romans and co. Students could not list them. Now, part A of the question: neither could they aptly tackle the question on the impact of the Roman conquest on the Berber civilization. The conclusions drawn from the poor performance of candidates on these questions is that candidates do not do sufficient reading of the topics in the section A part of the history syllabus. So the section B part of number 2 in the 2021 WASSCE was also asking them to write the impact or the influence of the Roman conquest of the Berber civilization. And chief examiners are saying that students could not do this work. And those part of the syllabus are very, students don't learn those areas well. I recall when we were going to write this paper, one of my students was reading that area in her exercise books. I had given them an exercise, and he was just going through, and lo and behold, this question came. So students should read very well in this area. Let's look at question number 3. Several candidates avoided this question on axiom, and the question was on axiom. And I know you will also avoid the same question. Candidates were to identify the social effect of the introduction of Christianity on the people. Those who attempted it dwelt more on the introduction of Christianity and partially explained the social effect. However, a few of the candidates performed excellently on the question. They ably expanded points such as Christianity became recognized as a state religion. Christianity brought about peace. Literature also flourished. Aside the good performance put up by few candidates regarding this question, the overall performance of candidates was poor. And this question was also about the effect of the social effect of the introduction of Christianity on axiom. And to the examiners, a lot of the candidates were rather interested in writing about the introduction of Christianity on axiom. And this, I always tell my students that always go for the question, attack the question, all right? And these are some of the points that you were supposed to raise. Let's look at the question number 4, sorry. This question was very popular, and those who attempted it performed creditably with high scores. They ably identified and explained the ways the possession of iron improved the life of people by way of employment, income, item of trade, of course, currency, and so on and so forth. The overall performance of candidates was very good. So this one, the local industries, I think students were asked to explain the importance of the iron industry to the pre-colonial people in Ghana. And I think this one was quite popular and it was very easy. So students were able to raise these points, and that was very good. Now let's take a look at the question number 5. Many candidates attempted this question. The part A was rightly handled. The European countries involved in the scramble for and partition of Africa were correctly listed. So the question part A, that's the 5A, demanded that they list the European countries that were involved in the partition of Africa, and students were able to do that correctly. However, the part B was poorly handled. The effects of the scramble for and partition of Africa were wrongly taken to be the effects of colonization. For candidates, should have explained how partition led to boundary disputes, loss of independence of traditional states, European interference in local affairs, divisions of ethnic groups and families, as well as exploitation of natural resources. The overall performance of candidates was average. So you see, when students are writing about the effect of the partition of Africa, you'll see them writing about the effect of colonization. And so this is what you should be very careful about. The effect of the partition of Africa is not the same as the effect on colonization. So let's take a look at number 6. It says what? Majority of candidates avoided this question. Those who attempted it were able or were unable to impress with their answers. The part A was done with errors in spelling. Some candidates simply wrote asin and did not specify whether asin apemanim, asin attendansu regarding, of course. So they were asked to write about the asin people, and they just wrote asin. Now, regarding the part B, some candidates listed the points without expanding it. They were able to identify trade rivalry, acquisition of gun and gunpowders, protection of wrongdoers by Europeans, and personal desire, and some leaders to expand their kingdoms. The overall performance of students was very poor in this question. Now, let's take a look at the question number 7. Now, few candidates attempted this question. They did not give many reasons that promoted nationalism in Ghana. They dwelt on unemployment, shortage of goods and high prices, problems of ex-servicemen, and the 24 shooting incident, which sparked the. For candidate fell short on the mention of discrimination against Africans in the political and economic structure, role of the press, formation of political parties, and lack of infrastructure. However, the overall performance of students was good. So this one, they were asked to talk about, I think, the rise of nationalism after the Second World War, and students, we are told, only talked about some of these things, but they did not talk about the others too. Let's look at question number 8 and 9, then we'll bring it to an end. This question was highly popular. Many of the candidates who attempted did extremely well. Candidates did well by highlighting the major achievements of a Champon regime. Mention was made of the regime's flagship programs such as Operation Feed Yourself, Industry Rise, Revolutionary, Irrigation of Accra Plains, Hydro, Electric Gam, and so. So this question was also about the achievement of a Champon, and according to the examiners, this was a popular question, so a lot of students did quite well. Now, question number 9. This question was very popular. The question number 9, we are told, was also a popular question. The part A was excellently done. However, some few candidates got the spelling of the names of the leaders of the UGCC wrong. So the part A demanded for the names of the leaders of the UGCC. Now the part B was answered well. Reasons for the introduction of indirect rule were explained excellently by candidates. So they were also asked to talk about the reasons for the introduction of indirect rule, and that was also well explained. So example of the points were insufficient British officers, inadequate funds, language barrier, inadequate knowledge of the hinterland, success story of this policy elsewhere. Good. So the performance of candidates in all was good. Good. So I hope you have had some knowledge about the weaknesses of some candidates in the WAEC, in the WASSCE. And so please bear in mind, don't also repeat the same thing. Of course, if you like this video, kindly hit on the subscribe button. And as time moves on, we will deal with more of the subjects. Have a nice day and bye-bye.